that's coming out, and they're using the 14th Amendment to basically ensure that Trump can no longer run for office, even if he's not impeached. Because the 14th Amendment, Section 3, says anyone found guilty of insurrection. And the House impeachment is, you know, you're found, you are impeached for insurrection. Anyone done doing insurrection, you don't have to be found guilty of it doing insurrection. And not only that, you have a document now that came out of the military saying Trump did insurrection. So there's probably stuff going on behind the scenes. I think it's what's going to come out is the Pentagon guy that Trump put into power ultimately, saw the plan foiled and left office, right? So I think there's going to be probably quite a bit of evidence showing that Trump actively was stopping federal forces. As we know, it took over 2 hours, 3 hours for federal aid in the form of the military, to get to support the Capitol. The fact that the Capitol Police didn't ask for any more assistance, even though they knew it. So there was an inside job here. A guy wearing a mega hat. It was all part of this idea that if they just showed up, the military would be there for them. They're this delusional, QAnon thinking, that this fantasy reality that they live in, thinking that this would have been okay, and really how close things were to being really bad. For example, if that police officer, if you watch the video, he's the only one in that hallway. There's a guy further down, but that hallway is what led to a whole bunch of representatives. He was the one person, the three younger police officers, if you watch the earlier part of that video, who are standing at the door, are persuaded to leave, and they should be fired for leaving there, for doing that. Unfortunately, that's their job. When you sign up to be a police officer, their job was to protect, and they left their post. And like a military, you would be court-martialed. But I understand why. I probably may have left myself. But the simple fact is that was one guy, and him shooting that woman, that protester, that QAnon protester, really put things into perspective. That are you willing to die for what you're doing? The people at the beginning now being showed that they were prepared. They had weapons. They had bear spray, had other things that they were using, against the police. You actually see in one picture they're all like yellow, like all that stuff, yellow stuff. It blinds the bear. They were spraying it at the police. Something I don't think we've seen with the Antifa, right? Folks against the police. They have umbrellas and other stuff like that to protect them against. If not, they were ready to attack the police. So the use of the 14th Amendment to say no one could hold office found guilty, who does insurrection. The fact that you have a military letter coming out of the military saying he did insurrection, and also basically quelling any fantasies that the military is going to step up for Trump, right? And maybe there are units or captains or whatever Trump folks among the military, the upper echelon, are just nipping that in the butt, saying it ain't gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. So I think that the positive outcome, what's going to come out of these events coming up, is that ultimately we'll know who these idiots are. They're going to show their face. They're going to be arrested, right? And we will know who these radicalized, homegrown terrorists are. And the opportunity is to get them off the street and to have the rule of law. We have to be a society with a rule of law. And if we're a society that ultimately flaunts the rule of law for one group and not for the other, then we have a failed society. So, I think it's really interesting what's developing. The fact that Mitch McConnell now is saying this is a good thing. He has seen, I think he gets it. He's like, oh, we could get him on this, find him guilty. And the use of the 14th Amendment is brilliant in the sense of the Democrats. And I mean, there's some really smart people up there working to ensure that this moron never takes office again. You have to understand, Hitler tried an insurrection, right, and failed, and later came back and was reelected and came back even stronger. And the thing that I think these lawmakers, understand is that history rhymes. If you give Trump the ability to come back, right, and be stronger as a result of this, and build upon it, if you can't bar this, this megalomaniac, this deranged individual, sociopath who really doesn't care, who's been literally fleecing his sheep out of tens of millions of dollars with this fake bullshit, and foaming individuals that all they need to do is come up and march against the Capitol. If we do not act against that, then we pretty much risk everything. So the Trump insurrection, is ultimately going to lead to his downfall, right? That's what the failure. So now everyone's coming together, and that's the American thing, right? We come together. We don't agree in this kind of behavior for the most part for us as individuals. So exciting times. I'm here in Japan. I left. I wanted to be away from all this bullshit, away from all the coronavirus. That's the other thing too. There's 4,000 people a day dying, right? He should be held accountable. All he needed to do was wear a mask and tell people wear masks. That's all he needed to do. And even now, the protesters and everything else, even in the midst of a massive, mutating pandemic, you have to understand it is mutating now. This virus is mutating. So these vaccines potentially, right? Potentially could be mutated out because there's so much contagion in there that one strain will mutate out and not become resilient to the vaccine and make the vaccines useless. That's a real reality. We're seeing the African mutation. There's a Japanese mutation, and there's the UK mutation. So all this is because we have allowed, right? COVID is not the flu. The flu, does kill some people. Doesn't kill. The flu has never killed 4,000 people a month, right? Name me one time in the history of the flu that's ever killed 4,000 people. It is a kind of flu. It's a highly contagious flu, far more contagious than it. And all you need to do is go to a hospital room. If you don't believe it, go to your local hospital and see how bad it is. And what people don't realize in regards to coronavirus, it isn't the virus that kills. It's when you don't have enough doctors to administer the care. You don't have enough medical staff to administer the care, right? And ultimately, that is when people die, because you can't get anything done without having a doctor's orders. And when you don't have enough doctors to administer to it, then that's it, right? And oh yeah, right. The hospital's empty. Sure. So where are you located? What hospital did you go to? Give me facts, right? Which hospital did you go to, and which one was empty yesterday? Because you're obviously Kentucky hospital was empty. What's the name of the hospital? Greenview, right? The ER. So there's no coronavirus in Kentucky. Kentucky has horrible cases going on right now on there. Most of the red states do. And the simple fact is, I live in a country where we have, how many infections we had in Japan here? We had 13 over the past, or 4 in the past week here in where I'm at. So, having, anyone, I guess you don't wear a mask either. I'm a Trump supporter here. You don't wear a mask? You don't believe in it? You think it's fake? On it? So, and the only reason why America is in such a situation is because it's been politicized. You have one group of Americans who refuse to wear masks. Even in the, um, house, right? They were refusing to wear a mask. You know why? Everyone wears a mask in Japan, and everywhere they've hung plastic at chest height. You go into a convenience store and there's a plastic barrier. You can interact underneath the plastic barrier, but you can't breathe upon the worker. Really a simple response. Just hang plastic that comes down to your chest so you can't breathe or they can't breathe on you, right? So it's, and that's it. They just put thumbtacks and they hung plastic. That's it. You go to any restaurant, that's basically how it is. You cannot speak. Everyone is interacting through some plastic on there. But what do you think about the insurrection? Was that real? What do you think about Trump impeachment coming up? Do you think that's gonna happen? You think the Republicans are gonna vote? Now, I did hear something really interesting. Is that the argument for all these GOP Republicans voting for the election fraud bullshit was out of fear that their family will be targeted. Now, I've not heard this. So basically, they're fearful that if they don't stand up with Trump, that their family or themselves may be targets by these radicalized, QAnon Trump 2020 supporters in their home states. And and if you can imagine like all the death threats that in Georgia, the elections guy got and everything else, that's one of the arguments why they're giving that they're supporting the president is out of fear of being targeted. I think that I think it's more selfish. They want those voters. They want to be able to say, "Hey, I voted for the president. Vote, keep me in office." Right? Yeah. Well, right. So that's why the insurrection, the way that they're doing the impeachment, is they're building the impeachment of the president around the 14th Amendment, which prohibits anyone who is found, who does insurrection against it. And I think the argument is that if it doesn't need a conviction, you can get the House. If the House says it's insurrection, then that 14th Amendment, there's going to be a legal case if he does run. But I think that it would be the nail in the coffin for Trump and I think that's what Mitch McConnell is now seeing, is he's saying that, oh, I can get this nightmare out of our hair 4 years from now, because it's a low-hanging fruit. If Trump leaves office and he can come back in 2024 and run again, right? Then all these GOP Republicans and everything else have to deal with that. If he is gone and he ultimately can't run again, then that is, that's a way to get Trump gone. So it's some interesting things. The Trump tyranny is coming to an end. Anyone who says the coronavirus is a flu, right, really doesn't understand the flu, because the flu doesn't kill 4,000 people a day. That is what's happening in the States. Hospitals are full. I'd be interested to see that, the hospital there in Wintergreen that the person put in there, whether it was true. Maybe, that little town, maybe he's lucky he was able to get in there. Anyway. Anyway, so thanks for watching. Be safe out there. And ultimately, bye-bye Trump.